Hello, and welcome to the Killing Zone podcast. If you've been here before, welcome back. If this is your first time, welcome. My name is Lindsay, and I like to dive into the strange and unknown. During this podcast, I will tell you stories of murder, deceit, and the macabre. Strap in and get ready for the Killing Zone. This is a new episode. This is not a re-recorded episode, but it is new. So strap in and get ready, guys. On today's episode, we will be discussing Timothy Treadwell, also known as the Grizzly Man, who spent much of his life living with the bears. Warning: some of the contents in this podcast are graphic and not suitable for all listeners. Listener discretion is advised. Have you ever felt like you didn't belong in society? Felt like you could not make it in life? This is how Timothy Treadwell felt. Treadwell felt like he belonged living amongst the bears. He took living with the bears so seriously that his life and his partner Amy Huingard's life was taken by a grizzly bear. This is the story of Timothy Treadwell, the Grizzly Man. Timothy Treadwell was the third of 5 children born to Val and Carol Dexter in Long Island, New York on April 29, 1957. Treadwell attended Quannaquoit High School and was the star of his high school swim team. His parents described him as always being very fond of animals growing up, so much so he had a pet squirrel named Willie. They also said he was an ordinary young man until he left home and went to college. When he left for college, he created a new life for himself, stating that he was a British orphan who was born in Australia. Val Dexter said that his son's downfall came when he had auditioned for a role on the show Cheers, the role of Woody Boyd, which was given to Woody Harrelson. When Treadwell had lost this audition, he started to fall to alcoholism and drug use. In 1987, Treadwell legally changed his name from Dexter to Treadwell. The name Treadwell came from his mother's family that he had used informally for some years. Since Treadwell had loved animals so much, his friend convinced him that it would be a good idea for him to travel to Alaska and watch bears. When he had his first encounter with the bear, he felt like this would be his life calling. His life of studying and living with the wild grizzly bears would last 13 years before his life would be taken by the very creature that he had become so fascinated with. Treadwell's mission to protect bears began in the late 1980s after surviving a near-fatal heroin overdose. In his book, Among Grizzlies, Living with the Wild Bears in Alaska, Treadwell claims that his drug addiction grew from his alcoholism and attributed his recovery from drug and alcohol addictions entirely to his relationship with bears. One thing that Treadwell did not understand is that habituating bears to the presence of man could only increase the chance that harm could one day come to the bear or the man, in this case, the man being Treadwell and his girlfriend Amy. Treadwell would spend the early part of each season camping on the Big Green, which was an open area of bear grass in Hollow Bay on Katmai Coast. Treadwell called this area the Grizzly Sanctuary. Treadwell would get extremely close to bears he would observe. He would even touch them and play with the bear cubs. He claimed that he would always be careful around the bears, but he developed a trust and respect with these animals. He even gave the bears he encountered names. He's seen many bears during each summer and claimed to have built a strong standing relationship with them. Tom Smith, a research ecologist with Alaska Science Center of U.S. Geological Service, declared that Treadwell was breaking every park rule there was, in terms of distance to the bears, harassing wildlife, and interfering with natural processes. Right off the bat, his personal mission was at odds with the Park Service. He had been warned many times. Tom Smith says that Treadwell's death was tragic, but not unpredictable. During the later part of each summer, Treadwell would move to Khalifa Bay and camp in an area especially thick with brush that he called the Grizzly Maze. In the area, chance of crossing paths with a wild grizzly bear was much higher since the location intersected bear trails. Treadwell recorded almost 100 hours of video footage and produced a large collection of still photographs. Treadwell claimed that he would go on these trips alone, but his girlfriend Amy could be seen in some of the footage. By the year 2001, Treadwell started to gain notable attention from the media and environmental circles. He made frequent appearances as an environmental activist. He went throughout the entire United States educating school children about bears. He even made some television appearances on Discovery Channel, The Late Show with David Letterman, and Dateline NBC to discuss his experience with bears. Treadwell met Charlie Russell, who studied bears, raised them, and lived with them in Kamchatka, Russia for a decade. Russell told Treadwell that he should carry bear spray and use electric fences. Russell was one of the people who praised Treadwell for his devotion to the bears despite the backlash that Treadwell would get from many environmental groups. According to the organization, Treadwell founded the Grizzly People. Grizzly People was an organization that was devoted to protecting bears and preserving their wilderness habitat. During Treadwell's time in Katmai, no bears were being poached, but a year after his death, 5 bears were killed and poached. Alright guys, let's take a break and listen to an ad from our sponsor, and we will return and continue the story of the Grizzly Man. Welcome back, and thank you for listening to a word from our sponsor. Let's continue. Treadwell's years with the bears were not without disruption. From the start, the National Park Service expressed their worries about his behavior. The restrictions made by the park irritated Treadwell. According to a file kept on Treadwell by the National Park Service, rangers reported that he had at least 6 park violations from the year 1994 to 2003. Some of these violations included guiding tourists without a license, camping in the same area for longer than the 7-day limit set by the National Park Service, improper food storage, wildlife harassment, and conflicts with visitors and their guides. Authorities became very frustrated with Treadwell because he refused to install an electric fence around his camp and would not carry bear spray to use as a deterrent. Do you think that if Treadwell had worked with the authorities and did what they had asked, that he would be alive today? Treadwell did not want to use these things because he did not want to cause pain to these bears. He did use bear spray on one occasion and felt much remorse afterwards. In September 2003, Treadwell and his girlfriend Amy Huengard, born October 23, 1965 in Buffalo, New York, visited Katmai National Park, which is on the Alaska Peninsula across Shukoff Strait from Kodiak Island. In the documentary Grizzly Man, Werner Herzog states that according to Treadwell's diaries, Huengard feared bears and felt very uncomfortable in their presence. Her final journal entries indicated that she wanted to be away from Katmai. Treadwell set his campsite near a salmon stream where wild bears commonly feed in autumn. Treadwell was in the park later in the year than normal, at a time when bears attempt to gain as much fat as possible before winter. Food was scarce that fall, causing the bears to be even more aggressive than usual, even eating their baby cubs. Treadwell and Huengard were to leave the park at his usual time of year and had returned to Kodiak on September 26th to store their gear for this season and catch a connecting flight to return to their home in California. After an argument with the airline ticketer over the price of altering his return ticket, Treadwell and Huengard made the decision to return to their campsite on September 29th for an additional week. Treadwell also wanted to locate a favorite female brown bear that he was concerned about. He said he hated modern civilization and felt better in nature with the bears than he did in big cities around humans. The bears he had been used to during the summer had already gone into hibernation, and the bears that Treadwell did not know from other parts of the park were moving into the area. Some of the last footage taken by Treadwell, hours before his death, includes video of a bear diving into a river repeatedly for a piece of dead salmon. Treadwell mentioned in the footage that he did not feel entirely comfortable around this particular bear. In the documentary Grizzly Man, Herzog speculates on whether Treadwell filmed the very bear that killed him. Around noon on Sunday, October 5th, 2003, Treadwell spoke with an associate in Malibu, California by satellite phone. Treadwell mentioned no problems with any bears. The next day, October 6th, Willie Fulton, a Kodiak Air taxi pilot, arrived at Treadwell and Hoongard's campsite to pick them up, but found the area abandoned except for a bear, and contacted the local park rangers. The couple's mangled remains were discovered quickly upon an investigation. Treadwell's disfigured head, partial spine, and right forearm and hand, with his wristwatch still on, were recovered a short distance from the camp. Hoongard's partial remains were found next to the torn and collapsed tents, partially buried in a mound of twigs and dirt. A large male bear protecting the campsite was killed by park rangers during their attempt to retrieve the bodies. A second adolescent bear was also killed a short time later when it charged the park rangers. An on-site necropsy of the large male bear revealed human body parts such as fingers and limbs. The younger bear was consumed by other animals before it could be necropsied. In the 85-year history of Katmai National Park, this was the first known incident of a person being killed by a bear. A video camera recovered at the site proved to be operating during the attack, but police said that the 6-minute tape contained only voices and cries as a brown bear mauled Treadwell to death. The tape begins with Treadwell yelling that he's being attacked. "Come out here! I'm being killed out here!" he screams. The fact that the tape contained only sound led troopers to believe that the attack might have happened while the camera was stuffed in a duffel bag or during the dark of night. In Grizzly Man, filmmaker Herzog claims that the lens cap was on the camera, suggesting that Treadwell and Hoongard were in the process of setting up for another video sequence. When the attack happened, the camera had been turned on just before the attack, but recorded only 6 minutes of audio before running out of tape. This, however, was enough time to record the bear's initial attack on Treadwell and his agonized screams. Its retreat after Hoongard tells Treadwell to play dead, and when she attacked it, and its return to carry Treadwell off into the forest. The audio of the attack hasn't been made available to listen to for the public and is considered lost, but it is rumored that there is audio that was leaked on YouTube that you can listen to. However, this is not real audio. I did listen to some audio myself and it was disturbing in nature. This audio is not the real audio. I do think that it is a reenactment of what happened, but is still disturbing to listen to. Also, if you're interested in learning more about the Grizzly Man, you can check out the documentary on YouTube for free right now. It was actually the documentary that got me interested in this story. So it concludes, yes, wildlife can be beautiful and majestic, but in most cases it's safer to observe this wildlife from afar instead of trying to develop a relationship with wild animals such as grizzly bears. Or you could end up in a similar situation. I want to thank you for listening, and I hope you return for the next episode of The Killing Zone. This is Lindsay signing off. Stay healthy and stay happy, killers.